Cells. All organisms originate from one special single cell called a gamete that needs another gamete for it to divide, just like a lady needs a man to have a child. When one of the million sperm cells finally finds the one and only of the thousands of egg cells that manage to anchor and take root, then the sperm penetrates her and ejaculates his DNA into her. The egg shudders as if in orgasm and starts to have a life. It eats and grows until it divides. Depending on the cell and the need for new cells, a cell divides at the rate from once an hour to once a day for about 50 times before it dies. When it dies, it leaves behind very many generations of cells, like a great-great-grandmother with many great-great-grandchildren. In this way, each cell can be likened to a human being. In this analogy, the cell wall is the skin, the cell nucleus is the brain, and the rest of the cell structure would be the various organs like the stomach, heart, and lungs. Other analogies are cells as houses, walled cities, bordered countries, islands, continents, or even the world. In this case, the organelles in the cell would be likened to kitchens, stairs, industries, factories, train stations, police and fire stations, and armies. Cells emerged about 4 billion years ago as the building blocks of life. Cells are capable of synthesizing new proteins which are essential for their cellular activities. A salty sea called cytoplasm, which is 70% water, contains the organelles of the cell. A semi-permeable membrane made mostly from a double layer of fatty acids envelops the cytoplasm and protects it from the environment. This membrane also envelops and gives structure to all organelles within the cell. Proteins embedded in the membrane act like pumps and regulate how much of what moves in and out. Membranes also contain receptor proteins and, like ears, eyes, and hands, allow cells to detect external signaling molecules such as hormones. Organelles, like organs in our body, carry out one or more vital function of the cells. The centrosome is like muscle. It produces fibers like a spider produces spider webs and makes a net called the cytoskeleton that anchors organelles in place and separates chromosomes during cell division. Like muscle, it can move the flagella, the tail of sperm cells, to make them as mobile as tadpoles. The nucleus is like our brain and like our testicles all in one. It is where DNA replicate and where the instruction code is written in chromosomes so that each cell dances to the same music to make an organism like a plant, an ant, or a human. DNA also contains the code to build various proteins such as enzymes and hormones, the cell's primary machinery. Ribosomes act as assembly lines to synthesize proteins from amino acids. Golgis produce and package macromolecules such as proteins and lipids that are synthesized by the cell. Endoplasmic reticulum, or ER, like DHL or UPS, transport these macromolecules to specific destinations within the cell. Lysosomes, like stomachs, contain enzymes to digest excess or worn-out organelles, food particles, and engulfed viruses or bacteria. Peroxisomes, like garbage collectors, have enzymes that rid the cell of toxic peroxides. Vacuoles store water, food, and waste. Mitochondria are self-replicating organelles that generate energy by splitting glucose into ATP, much like we split logs to make wood for a fire. Like the bacteria that our stomachs need to break down food into glucose, our cells need mitochondria to break down glucose into adenosine triphosphate or ATP, the fuel used by cells. Like the bacteria in our stomachs, mitochondria have their own DNA and are organisms in their own right. Types of cells. Our bodies are just walking and talking blobs of different cells, which are mostly proteins. There are 210 different types of cells in the human body, from the hair, nail, and skin cells on the outside to everything else inside. Here are some of the more interesting ones. Adipocytes are cells that store fat. They insulate organs from shock and temperature, and like a tank of oil, store energy for later burning. Bone cells, like warehouses, store metals. They support the body like steel beams and protect the brain like a helmet. Like a vault, they guard the bone marrow, where 500 billion blood cells are produced each day. Like firemen, red blood cells, called erythrocytes, carry oxygen to the other cells to burn. Like policemen, white blood cells, called leukocytes, move to any wound site and kill microorganisms like bacteria that cause infection. Sex cells, called gametes, like sperm cells and egg cells, have half the DNA of normal cells. When eggs get fused or fertilized by sperms, they get the full set of DNA and start the dance of self-division, called mitosis, that continues until they die. Nerve cells, called neurons, are a special type of cell found in bodies of most animals. Only sponges and a few other simpler animals have no neurons. Neurons, the core components of the nervous system, which include the brain and the spinal cord, connect to each other like electrical cables to form neural networks resembling underground mycelium of mushrooms. They transmit information by electrical and chemical signaling. Neurons form extensions called axons that can be up to 1 meter long and connect to other neurons like a cable. A number of specialized types of neurons exist. Sensory neurons respond to touch, sound, light, and numerous other stimuli affecting cells of the sensory organs that then send signals to the spinal cord and brain. Motor neurons receive signals from the brain and spinal cord and cause muscle contractions. With the exception of neural stem cells, neurons do not undergo cell division. These are the only cells in our body that do not divide. Brain cells are kept alive as long as the supporting body feeds it enough glucose to fuel it, and the sensory organs feed it enough sensations to make it think. When machines finally replace our bodies and sensory organs, then our brains will be kept alive indefinitely, opening the door and paving the way to immortality.